morning, everybody. Good morning, the world. That's exciting to hear. So thank you for inviting the Commission to participate in for the introduction to this workshop. Actually, you know that the LIFE project is obviously funded by the Commission, and we think that indeed, citizen science is an important topic to better involve landowners in nature conservation and also to build bridges with the naturalist community. I will first have few words on the need for data, and then I will explore the new opportunities created by citizen science for policy in the field of nature conservation, and then maybe also address few points that seem to be very important when it comes to citizen science. So let's start by the importance of collecting data for nature policies, biodiversity, and related topics. Of course, we need data to take sound policy decisions and to have good implementation of our policies. That this is critical and very much needed. There is no point in setting policy objectives if there are no indicators to measure the efficiency and the achievement of those objectives. So we need to measure the effectiveness of what we do. For that, we need data, and complex issues biological data are complex issues, need to rely on a wide set of data that are reliable. When we want to know the status of a species at EU level, we need very much to rely on a wide data set, and the same when we look at the trends of conservation status of a species, on the presence of a species, on the period of reproduction of a species. These are all sensitive things we need to know, and for that we need very good data, and that's always a challenge. Of course, sometimes we develop policies and it creates a new needs for data, but actually it's much more the opposite which is happening. I mean that more often the policy development builds on the available data. And I take an example. The Commission has recently released its nature restoration law, and the nature restoration law proposes to use the grassland butterfly index and the common farmland bird index. These are data that are very much collected with citizen science, and the new policy developments builds on this available tool that are very much welcome. So those indexes that I have mentioned are just examples. We also have an important reporting system under the Habitats and the Birds Directive, and for member states use citizen science to report the status of the species and the threats and other data to the EU, thanks to citizen science. So this is obviously a very important policy tool, and by citizen science, I mean here data collected by the public on a voluntary basis. So, and those data are then put in a system, kind of global database, but so it all mainly concerns the provision of data, but it also can concern the provision of samplings. This is another aspect of citizen science. Now, let's look at the opportunities created by citizen science. Let's look at the benefits for the data provider. For the data provider, I think there are many benefits because it gives a possibility to share the observation. My observation can be shared with a wide community. So if I have data on a piece of paper, it's valid, but cannot be used. While if I put it and I share it with the others, it can be used for many purposes. It creates a sense of community. I'm belonging to a community. And it's also a learning tool for me because I can see what the others do. So it's very motivating, and it can also create a sense of participation in a policy. For the land manager, who will introduce data. And it's also an archiving system that is very convenient. And it can be also used for the daily management of its area. So it can be used not only at policy level, but also at very local level. And then for the authorities, it provides new tools to design and measure the effectiveness of the policies, and it can help to build ownership of a policy. And then another aspect is that citizen science can be useful to collect data to enforce some policies. I take an example. If the poison birds are put in a database, it's a means for the authorities to create a map of hotspots of poisoning. Of course, one could say that the ideal situation is when data is collected by experts according to a scientific protocol. In such a case, the data are very much reliable and representative. This is the traditional manner, very valid, but some could say, as regards citizen science, that it's not reliable enough. But there are some characteristics that are useful to keep in mind to make sure that citizen science will provide the data that are serious, reliable, and usable by the authorities and the others. The first one is, of course, to have a good quality check and to ensure the robustness of data. But another very, very important aspect is that the robustness of data very much depend on the number of people that will introduce data. So the fact that the citizen science relies on a very high number of data providers make it powerful. And that's the beauty of citizen science. The higher number of people that introduce data, the higher it will be reliable. And to achieve that objective, it's important to incentivize people to provide their data. And in that field, trust and transparency and accessibility to the treated data is also essential. And that's a psychological aspect of citizen science that really needs to be taken into account, especially when it comes to private land and private landowners. And then constant improvements of the system are needed. And for that, behind the screen, there must be a powerful system to manage the database and the platform where the data can be entered. That's the main opportunities I see. The main characteristics a citizen science system should have. And before ending, I will touch upon two specific aspects. The first one is that here we are talking about voluntary reporting. There is another type of reporting, which is mandatory reporting. And I have in mind the collection of back data for hunting, for instance. And in the case of mandatory reporting, there might be sometimes a reluctance to report. And I'm just wondering whether it's not a good option to combine systems where mandatory data and voluntary data can be put in the same system, because there you create an incentive to report data also on mandatory data. And I have in mind a system that was created for hunting in Israel, which combined both, and actually it sounds very much promising. Another aspect I would like to raise is that citizen science is very important to build bridges. And when it comes to private land conservation, building bridges between communities, NGOs, authorities, citizens, landowners is essential. And this is really also the beauty of citizen science, is that thanks to data, people can connect, learn, and improve their management. As you see, citizen science has become a very important policy tool. Extending its use to private land areas is very important because it has the power to extend very much the geographical coverage of the data set. And of course, there are specific challenges. You are aware of them, you will address them, but I would very much like to insist on trust, transparency, which are key elements to make citizen science even more powerful. But I think there are pragmatical solutions that can address this aspect of trust and transparency. And this deserves a careful attention, and I'm sure that you will look at that during the day. Unfortunately, I will have to leave, but I'm really think that the outcome of your reflection should be shared, and I'm sure it will be done via the different participants and organizers. So thanks again, and looking forward for the outcome of this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We know that you're a very busy man, so so thanks for being here. We have time for one question. I don't know if anybody would like to send a question. I have heard very interesting things about data being reliable, about the need of a wide data set, policy level, local level, effectiveness management, building bridges, transparency. So there's a lot of very interesting things you have raised, Joseph. Again, we have time for one or two questions. Anybody? If not, I would like to ask you one question, Joseph. Yeah, because later on you have to leave. Yeah, you have mentioned a lot of things in your talk, and you talk about building bridges. You have talked about building bridges that you think that through citizen science some problems could be solved. If you could comment on that comment about building bridges, if you could explain why do you think citizen science could contribute. Can't hear you.
Yes, sorry. As you know, I mean, when it comes to nature conservation, many types of people are involved. We have the land managers, we have the NGOs, we have these authorities, the citizens, and all those people have a common interest in on the same topic, but they have different objectives. And of course, there are fears, and that sometimes will be used for purposes that will not suit, for instance, the landowners. You are very well aware of that. I mean, site designation of nature conservation areas and things like that are sensitive issues that are based on data and can also be based on citizen science. So this might be a risk related to citizen science, but it's really important to overcome that. And that's why I'm insisting very much on building trust, because the landowners can also find a lot of benefits to that, and also the others. And there is a lot of added value to have people who understand each other. And then it opens new areas for developing nature conservation. And I might just finish with just one proposal, short proposal. It might not be appropriate at all, but I have always thought that it would be good if in a citizen science platform, there would be a box or few boxes to tell whether you are a naturalist, whether you are a farmer, whether you are a landowner, a hunter, or all of them. Of course, you need to rely on what people say. They might cheat, but no reason to cheat at first sight. I think if you just declare that, it might show that actually there is a lot of people having the same interest, and it might help building bridges. That's just something I have in mind for long.
That's a very good comment, Joseph. Now that people are getting interested, and we have two questions. One from Piet. Yeah, we're gonna share 2 minutes. What kind of quality checks should be thinking about when you have said that we need to check this? What kind of quality checks, Joseph?
I'm not an expert in data management, so it's a bit difficult question. But I think at least when there is very weird data, ideally there should be, contacts with the data provider asking some information about the data that has been introduced. Although if there is a lot of data provider, I mean, this risk of wrong data is much not that important. But if the I mean, data providers are not so numerous, I think it's important to come back to the people to check with data. That's the main thing I have in mind, but I'm sure there are many other technical issues that I'm not aware of.
Okay, and very quick replies if possible. Kyriakos is asking about if you think that the involvement of universities, institutes of research is important collaboration.
Yes, of course. And I'm realizing that I've not mentioned researchers. Of course, researchers are essential, and I'm sorry for that. Of course, this is a very important community. And there is a need also to see how to combine citizen science with traditional science and traditional data collection. That's also a challenge. But I mean, member states, for instance, as regards the reporting under the Birds Directive, some member states combine citizen science and data collected by researchers.
Good.
Yes.
And last but not least, is the European Union, Commission, aiming to support the development of citizen science schemes through dedicated funding programs?
Yes, more or less. I mean, we are currently funding. We have a LIFE project that aims to support EBCC, so the European Bird Census Council, to improve the management of data and the portal, the UBirds portal, and things like that. So we are sometimes there are opportunities to yes, to support existing or systems, and on that I think it's better to build on existing systems than just create new ones. That's another remark. But
okay, well, thank you very much, Joseph. We don't have time for more questions. Thank you very much, and we're going to continue the seminar. Thank you, Joseph.